editor at the National Review, Jay Norlinger, founder of the conservative website The Bulwark, and author of How the Right Lost Its Mind, Charlie Sykes, and Republican strategist and senior advisor to the Lincoln Project, Susan Del Percio. The BBC's Caddy K is still with us as well. Jay, thank you so much for being with us. Are you West Coast this morning, or are you back on the East Coast?
I am on the East Coast. Yeah, lots of sleep.
Okay, good. So no excuses for anything that you say that because you're tired. So Jay, tell me, you've been obviously at the forefront of the conservative movement for quite a long time. We've all talked about our concerns about what's happened to conservatism over the past 20 years, skyrocketing deficits and debt, an unfocused foreign policy. What is, if this is just my assumption, not your assumption, but what if, looking at these polls, I am to assume that Joe Biden is elected and becomes president on January 20th. What is the future of conservatism? Where does conservatism go? Because all the reasons I ran for Congress, balancing the budget, limited federal government, Madisonian checks and balances, the upholding of NATO, the pushing back against Russia, those have ceased to be conservative planks in this modern Republican Party.
Sure. So what will unite Republicans or conservatives? Maybe a Democratic presidency. People like to have something to be against. And so that distracts from what they may be for, because they're for all sorts of different things. But it's easy for Republicans and conservatives at large to be anti-Biden, anti-democratic, with a big D. I often think of what George Will says when I ask the question, what is a conservative? He says, first of all, he's anti-left. And that can be a powerful thing, just as on the left, they're anti-right.
But isn't that why we're spinning in circles? Isn't that why over the past 20, 25 years, we've become ill-defined? All the things that we stood for before, it seems, have been brushed aside. You look, for instance, at when Ronald Reagan came into office, you had the Heritage Foundation and people like William Bennett and Jack Kemp, who were actually proposing a conservative way forward. William F. Buckley, as you know, column a day. There were ideas, and they weren't just about owning the libs. How do we move past this idea that we win if we do things that own the libs, even if that hurts the conservative cause?
I think we do it individually, one by one, by example. I don't think we don't have central headquarters, issuing directions. It's a matter of individual conscience. And I think the very term conservative, the idea of conservatism, is up for grabs. What is a conservatism? Beg your pardon, what is a conservative? Is he a populist? Is he a Trumpite? Is he a Reaganite? The term liberal shifted long ago. And I think that the term conservative is undergoing a shift. And it's distressing for some of us, but these things happen. So when people talk about conservatism and liberalism now, I used to be pretty secure in what these meant. I have to ascertain what they mean before the conversation can continue, because I'm not sure that we have a shared vocabulary.
Yeah. Charlie Sykes, Jay really does hit on an important point that actually conservatives, traditional conservatives, would understand. Certainly not the people that run around calling themselves conservatives now, but two of my heroes, Frederick Hayek and Russell Kirk. Both of them extraordinarily skeptical of these programs, central headquarters, a strong man telling the entire world. Hayek was so distrustful of any systems that actually that became a system in and of itself, his critics would say. And I mean, Russell Kirk, in the conservative mind, you read his 1986 introduction to that, so much of it just has to do with the fact it's like, hey, people, we don't have a program. We're skeptical of ideology. That is what the left does, and that's what leads to worldly hells. But here we are. It's, in this case, in my opinion, it's not a program. It's one man, and whatever he says, that defines conservatism.
Yeah, and by the way, I agree with a lot of what Jay said. Look, you need to make a distinction between conservative ideas and the insights of people like Frederick Hayek versus the conservative movement, conservative Inc., what's happened under Donald Trump, where it has become, dumber, meaner, more tribal, and more extreme. Look, a lot of us thought that the conservative movement was defined by people like George Will and Charles Krauthammer and William F. Buckley and Frederick Hayek. And today, it's defined by Donald Trump and Sean Hannity and Seb Gorka. So there's a lot of reconstruction to do here. And I agree, it's going to be very difficult to figure out what exactly is conservatism about, as opposed to simply being reactionary to what the Democrats are going to do. And I completely agree with Jay that at least on the surface, the Republicans will look more united after this election because they will be against whatever the Democrats do. This is what they do best. But, Joe, you just ran through a series of things that conservatives used to believe reflexively, small government, limited government, character matters, fiscal responsibility, American greatness based on American leadership and exceptionalism, and all of those things have been scrapped. And so what happens next? I would like to tell you that if Donald Trump leaves the White House, that conservatives will snap back to sanity, but I'm not sure. If the future of conservatism is what you hear on Fox News or what you hear from people like Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley, we're going to be in for a very, very rocky ride on the right, where conservatism basically becomes a sort of crude populism and irritable gestures and internet memes, as opposed to any sort of coherent ideology that we once thought constituted the conservative movement.
Yeah, I won't mention his name, but one senator that you mentioned, it seems like he's at a race to the bottom on his Twitter feed with Donald Trump. And again, it is the antithesis of what how conservatives used to think about themselves and how conservatives used to think about their belief system. Again, it's an individual belief system if you're true conservatism, because we don't believe in programs, we don't believe in central headquarters, we don't believe in one strong man. But Susan Del Percio, I'm so concerned about younger conservatives that are looking and seeing, again, I'm just speaking for myself, and seeing Donald Trump and seeing some of these other people that Charlie brought up and thinking that's what conservatism is. Again, for me, it was John Kasich on the floor of the House fighting against Bill Clinton's 1993 budget, fighting against an increase of taxes, working actually with the Democrat, Tim Penny, saying, hey, listen, I know that the New York Times and the Washington Post says we can never balance the budget, but they're wrong. Let me show you how we balance the budget while sending more power and authority back to the states and the localities. And Kasich laid that out. And everybody said he was crazy. And then we got elected in 1994. And guess what? We balanced the budget with thanks to John Kasich, his budget chairman, and a lot of freshmen fighting who believed in small government. We balanced the budget 4 years in a row. The only time that's happened in 100 years. That party is gone. What replaces that?
Well, it was a party based on principles and core values, and basically Donald Trump has just hijacked the name Republican, the label of being conservative. He hasn't hijacked the principles because he has none. So when we look forward, especially to younger conservatives, I actually think there is hope. I think after Donald Trump is out of office and the likes of Jay and Charlie and I are out there talking and writing about what these principles really are about, much like William F. Buckley did in the 60s that Reagan was able to capitalize on. I think we can see that again because we want to see principles. We want to see ideas. I don't think conservatism is going to be about beating the left. I think it's about going to be having ideas that are different from the left and basically convincing people that our ideas are better and that they should vote for them, not just be against whatever the left may have to say.
And Jay, it's so important also, I think, and I'd love to get your input on this. Too often, I think conservatives and Democrats look at demographic changes and say, oh, Republicans are doomed. When in fact, you look at the Hispanic population, it's not monolithic. There are a lot of conservative, pro-life, pro-government Hispanics, and certainly in the Cuban American community and in other Hispanic communities. George W. Bush got 44% of the Hispanic vote in 2004. There's no reason why demographic changes should doom conservatism. But I'm afraid too often that's the feeling that too many Republicans carry around with them. So I wonder, what do you think the future, again, I know you said it's individual as far as individual beliefs, but how does conservatism, not the Republican Party, how does conservatism speak to an America that's ever changing and undergoing a demographic revolution?
Well, it's not like me to quote Jimmy Carter very often, but I do in one instance, because he often quoted a teacher of his back in Plains, Georgia, I think, Miss Julia. I can't remember her last name, but Carter would say that Miss Julia said, we have to adapt to changing times with unchanging principles. And what I think you have to do is make an argument. Wasn't it Thatcher who said, first you make the argument and then you win the election? And you have to remember that life is long, and political life is long and cyclical. Speaking of Britain, I remember when the Labour Party was doomed. It was finished. Thatcher had vanquished it. Pretty soon they won, I think, 3 elections in a row. I remember when the Democratic Party was finished. We Reaganites had finished the Democratic Party off, and there was a line a lot of us used. Let me see if I can remember it. This goes back a long way. The Democratic Party has been reduced to a rump on 3 legs: Hollywood, aggrieved minorities, and public sector labor unions. A lot of us said that. And then the Democrats won and won. So one of the things about getting older is you realize that these things come and go. And I look forward to a brighter day in conservative politics. I don't necessarily mean winning, although winning is good. Winning is better than losing. But what are you winning for? What are you winning to do? What are you winning to represent? And I think people should speak and write and vote their conscience. And if you lose, fine. You may win tomorrow, but make the argument. Give people a choice. Someone said a choice, not an echo. Put your kind of conservatism, whatever it is, or liberalism, on the menu and ask for takers. That's my general view.
Amen. That's a great view. And I love the Jimmy Carter quote. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you.